Today, I want to talk about the Master Vault of Glass raid in Destiny 2 and the overall community reaction. Well, wanna is kind of a strong word, now that I think about it. How about many people have asked me to share my thoughts on the Master Vogue raid in D2? So let's throw caution to the wind and maybe burn a few bridges. I'm kidding, mostly. First, a little background. For those of you out there who either A, haven't been really tuned into the current season, or B, maybe don't raid very often at all. Vault of Glass is the latest raid to be added to D2. It was the very first raid ever back in Destiny 1. Bungie recently released the master version of Vault of Glass. It's essentially a much more challenging version of that raid. What does beating hard mode Vogue offer? I'll be honest, not a whole lot. Time-lost weapons are up for grabs, which are relatively neat, but I feel like a lot of players aren't breaking their balls every Tuesday because they're thirsty for a time-lost vision of Confluence. They're probably doing it because they want to be able to say that they did it, and or for the recognition factor. A lot of people love nothing more than chasing down hard-to-earn in-game seals and titles. God love them. And Fatebreaker, the Vogue-themed title, requires completion of every Vogue challenge completed on Master difficulty. Out of everybody I talk to, more people have their eyes fixed on the Fatebreaker title or because they're a completionist, rather than hunting down insert time-lost weapon here. And while I hate to criticize endgame content because I feel it's incredibly important to the longevity of Destiny, well, here we are. You might have heard the following term thrown around recently: artificial difficulty. If you're unfamiliar, a loose definition of artificial difficulty within the context of D2 would be making things more challenging, not by improving the enemy AI or by adding more complex in-game mechanics, but by stacking the deck in other areas. For example, giving enemies larger health bars and making them hit so hard that even red bar enemies can potentially one-shot you. Naturally, enemies in endgame level activities shouldn't be paper thin, but there seems to be kind of a sweet spot that a lot of players are hoping to reach. That way, you feel accomplished for conquering a difficult and complex challenge, for being smart, snappy, and quick, as opposed to something closer to a challenge of endurance for the player. From what I can tell, most players I've talked to are frustrated with Master Vogue mainly due to it being tied to what folks would call artificial difficulty. At this point, I feel like I can take the frustrations that I've heard and boil them down into two camps. I'll start with what I think might be the lesser evil of those two camps: souped up enemies and no different mechanics. Again, I gotta be real clear right here. Enemies in endgame content should not be pushovers, but there is something to be said when the vast majority of the challenge itself comes from the fact that enemies don't really behave any differently, but even red bars feel Snorlax level thick, and while you're pumping them full of bullets, they can simply backhand Guardians for near or flat out one-shot damage. A lot of the time, the sheer thickness of enemies forces players to counterattack with what kinda seems like lame tactics, which doesn't always feel as rewarding. In the Master Vogue Atheon encounter, me and some folks I was playing with decided that when we got teleported into the Oracle room, the best course of action by far was to simply beeline it to the very back of the room in order to avoid fighting the enemies altogether. Anything rather than that particular strategy was pretty much considered suicide because 2 hits was a guaranteed death sentence. Still under that first umbrella of stronger enemies and nothing else new is the desire for more challenging mechanics. Dado has a video where he talks about Master Vogue, which I really recommend, be sure to check it out later, and he mentions that even though the community often clamors for more of a challenge via the mechanics route, we, the community, frequently cut corners when given literally any opportunity to do so. And I mean, he's not wrong, although I will briefly play devil's advocate here. If you're unfamiliar with that phrase, it means I'm about to be pretentious for the sake of having an argument. As someone who has, on many occasions, taken the short path of nuking Riven's mouth with rockets and grenades, I gotta be honest, there's a very odd feeling of satisfaction sometimes when taking the non-intended path in D2. It's hard to describe. By building your loadout in just the right way, and very often by using nothing more than what Bungie gave us, the player base can conquer challenges in interesting ways. For those of you who have ever played D&D, shout out to my pen and paper, dice rolling nerd nation out there, it's the same feeling when you come up with something really crafty to overcome an obstacle or a challenge in a way that your DM didn't expect. Of course, it's not always that clear-cut. Pimping out your Guardian's loadout and DPS to the point where you can overwhelm Riven by being just so damned powerful is one thing, and pushing OG Atheon off the map in D1 to take advantage of his poor, stupid robot brain is another. But even though gamers across pretty much every community out there try to frequently cut corners when given the opportunity, it should probably still be the goal of difficult in-game encounters to be difficult in ways that don't simply go all in on artificial difficulty. Let's move on to the second camp of Master Vogue frustration, at least from what I've gathered, which after a lot of discussion I've boiled down to the artifact grind. Yeah, I know, not too far off from what we've already talked about, but artifact power being brought up so frequently, I gotta make a specific point to talk about it. If you don't know, the Master Vogue raid in D2 is recommended power level 1350. However, artifact power is enabled for the activity, meaning that the more you grind and grind and grind up your artifact power level, the less you'll get taint punched by the Vex in the raid. The only problem with that, I feel, is that it's the game rewarding the wrong thing. I don't want to beat a challenging endgame activity through endless bounty farming. That doesn't make me feel accomplished. It's the same reason the community wanted artifact power level turned off when Bungie brought back Trials from the dead. If I lose in Trials, I want it to be because the other team was just so damn good that they outplayed me. I don't want to lose in Trials because the other team spent so much time no-lifing bounties in a cave somewhere on the moon that my bullets bounce off of them. The same logic applies with Master Vogue, at least it does to me. It's being rewarded for time spent in the game versus being rewarded for conquering a challenging activity due to performance or teamwork or what have you. The other problem with artifact power is that it really cut out the accessibility factor to a lot of people who play the game even a lot. I know plenty of people out there who play a buttload of D2. They've hit the pinnacle cap, they've gone well beyond max season rank, but that alone isn't enough grinding required to not immediately get backhanded in Master Vogue. I'm kind of rambling a lot here, but I think the goal should have been to make Master Vogue more easily accessible to attempt, but still be challenging overall. Contest mode, which is what happens with raiding on day 1, is a great example of this done right. Everybody's power level gets hard capped at a certain number, and your artifact can't help you get any higher. It's very doable for players to hit the ceiling of how strong you can be when entering the activity, but even still, being that max power level is absolutely no guarantee of success. You still gotta really work together with your team to pull off the win in contest mode. I'm not exactly sure why Bungie didn't do that with Master Vogue, but they didn't. Don't get me wrong, players should feel intimidated by master level endgame content. Players shouldn't feel discouraged from even stepping 1 foot into the master raid because they didn't spend enough time bounty grinding after already achieving pinnacle power. Sorry to harp on that point, but just want to make sure that I'm making myself clear. Don't want to read something later like, oh, content creators want to water the game down and make it easier. Nah, you can make things more accessible, but still make them hella challenging. Anyway, those are my thoughts on both artificial difficulty and the Master Vault of Glass raid in D2, fairly condensed. There's probably more topics I could cover, including the loot structure, which I know not a ton of people are happy about. If you have any particular thoughts on Master Vogue, if you think it was too easy, if you think it was too hard, let me know what they are down in the comment section. I would love to hear from you. If you enjoyed today's video, do me a favor and click the like button. I know, very cliche thing to request, but it really does help out both me and my channel, and it's free to do. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.